I'd like to call the meeting of the Development Review Board to order, October 16, 2018.
Okay, first item on our agenda this evening are minutes from our last meeting.
Any additions, changes?
Make a motion to accept.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor? One abstention.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. The next item on our agenda, we have a sign-up sheet. It's up there on the podium. We ask everyone who's going to speak this evening to sign that sheet. It includes the following oath statement. I solemnly swear or affirm under the pains and penalty of perjury that the statements I make, the testimony I give, and other evidence I submit to the board at the board's public hearing held on this date shall be true and correct to the best of my knowledge and belief. And I do ask everybody to speak this evening to sign that. Next item is disclosure of any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest regarding the hearing this evening.
Have any? Don't see any.
All right, so I'm going to step away because this hearing involves an appeal of the decision of the administrative officer. That's me. Meryl Bent is going to be joining you folks. She is a partner with the law firm of Bennington, Campbell, Bent, and Stas. Did I have that right?
Yeah.
Got it, okay. And she is also going to participate with you folks during deliberative session to help draft any decision, the decision that you come up with, so she'll be dealing with that. I'll come back briefly after this is done to work to get us through the extension request for the Putnam project, but then I'll go home and Meryl will host you this evening. So with that, I'll let Meryl take it away.
You all set?
Yep, and we'll just proceed.
Who's going to start? Who wants to speak first out there?
I think it's appropriate for Mr. Weinberg to present his appeal to the board. You may want to announce for the record what this hearing is.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. We're here today to talk about the appeal of Bruce Weinfurt in connection with a notice of appeal from the decision that was made by the administrative officer on August 20th, 2018.
I signed it.
State your name, please, to the camera.
Excuse me?
State your name to the camera.
My name is Bruce Weinfurt.
Thank you.
I live at 1058 Silk Road, Bennington. My attorney could not be here this evening, so I don't know if you have gotten copies of these at all?
Yes.
You all have copies of that? Okay, great. So I think that explains everything of what our appeal is all about. Hopefully you've had a chance to read that.
I have.
Okay.
Guess we've all read it. Yeah, we got it in the mail, so.
All right, so do you have any questions of me about that? I can answer some questions.
Dan,
Is your primary concern contamination, chemical contamination of your lands?
Yeah, we had a water test done, and the surface water is a PFOA level of 560, which drains. There's a lot of issues. In the past year and a half, since they started the project, we have had water draining in the back northwest corner of our property. It has been coming at a drastic level. Currently, it's basically every time it rains, we have a couple inches of water in our back corner of the property. This spring, when I have an orchard. When I planted 7 new trees, at the bottom of all those trees I planted, there was water, which had never been an issue whenever I planted trees out there. The other issue is since the high PFOA level is on surface water, that it runs everywhere. Bennington College did a test, it was 560. And that is what is on our surface water that is running onto our property. So it has a high contaminated level. My wife is on the top 5% of PFOA in our blood. Our well has gone from a 297 to a 440. Before that was a 460.
So you've had 3 well tests?
We've had 4, I believe.
4?
The first one was a 297, and the last one was a 440. Before that was 460. So we're very concerned. With the project going on, I took many videos, probably almost 100 videos, 250 pictures of all the toxic dirt going in. There was cans or 55-gallon drums of stuff being dropped in, all that's on there. There was also road debris put in that was supposedly, I contacted Richard Spees, let him know about that, sent pictures of it, and he said he would inform the state about that. I guess that there was no permit for them to dump road debris. Still had the markings from the lines on the blacktop that was dumped there. When I did call them, that evening they tried to cover up that with soil, with dirt. I have pictures of them doing all that. So they never removed the road debris from that. They just buried it there. They buried big rusty pipes. They dumped a whole bunch of other things in there that we're not sure. I've got pictures of them dumping for months there. They dumped all kinds of things in there that I know that wasn't just fill. Now, everything they dumped was contaminated soil. Now, this was all farmland at one time. And currently, if you go back there, with all the compression of the soil there, it's got a mound in it. The soil, it used to be able to drain back there. It used to drain from the back corner to the power lines and down. It doesn't do that anymore. It drains into our property now. So, like I said, we always have a flood. It's killed half of my hops plants this year.
Any other questions? Bill?
You're maintaining that the water is running from where they filled onto your property?
Yes, it runs right off the back field in that back corner. It fills the west corner of our property. It's all
Are you
wet.
to the north or the south of your property?
We are to the south.
Okay.
Did the water drain off before they filled up there?
I never had problems in that corner of water in there all winter long. I had to take barrels of 55-gallon drums, covers, and put them in the back corner so we could walk the dog back there to
And
get
you
through.
said
It was wet all winter long.
You had PFOA in your well before they did this?
I would assume, yes, when they tested it, the first test was a 297,
Okay.
and as of now, it's gone up.
And there was already PFO in there?
There was already
Have you hooked up to
PFOA.
the new water main?
Excuse me?
Have you hooked up to the new water
No,
main?
we're not taking town water. We're staying with the, I'm a scientist. I'm a science teacher, so I stay with science. And the filter system works extremely well. TC Mail has come in and made sure it works. Our water tastes great that way. It's clean, and it's a whole lot cheaper than town water.
How long have you lived at the property?
30 years. And before that, the property was my wife's grandparents. And before that, the property back there was her great-grandparents' farm. So, and then where they went in there and bulldozed everything, for the last 30 years that we've gone back there snowshoeing and back in the back field, it's always been about ankle-deep water in that back corner. To me, that's considered what I would look at as being wetlands. So I don't understand how you can go back there, bulldoze everything, and just dump all this toxic PFOA material and then say that's okay. I mean, it's just, it's frustrating that we have a backyard now that's swamped all the time. Right now, what used to be grass has become mud because it's always wet back there. So whatever plans were made to put this back to normal, it's not normal anymore, especially when you go and do this on wetlands.
you keep saying that it's a contaminated soil.
It's all the PFOA
Is
soil.
that soil more contaminated than the soil that's on your site?
I'm sorry.
Is the soil they brought in any more contaminated than what's on the site?
I'm not sure of that, but I
I mean, do
know.
you know if it's contaminated?
Oh, yeah. I was told by Richard Spees that it's all contaminated soil. He came to my home twice.
Richard Reeves is who?
Richard Spees. He is, I guess, I understand to be the coordinator of the whole project. He
He's an
works for the
employee of the
state.
state?
Yes. And I called him numerous times when they started dumping stuff back there. They started dumping clay. He came to my home twice and never told me that they were going to do, it was late last fall and in the following spring, before the project was really getting going. And he wanted my signature on a form that said we would not take town water. And on the time he did it in that fall of 90, it was the fall when they just started the project, and then again early spring. And not at any time did he tell me that they were going to put a toxic dump in our backyard. Otherwise, we would have, known about it. I didn't find out till, I believe it was the 14th of May of this past year, that was what they were doing. We were under the impression, when we went to all these meetings at Bennington College, that they would go, whatever they would put there, they would clean up and put back to what it was originally.
Do you have a letter from Steve with the levels confirming that the soil was contaminated?
But the levels,
You said Steve came and tested it twice, the soil that they put in there. Do you have a statement from him with the levels?
Steve, no. What I've done
contamination?
is we've had TC Mail come and check our water, our well water. Dr. Foley at Bennington College came and did a test of our surface water, which was 560. That's the stuff that runs on top,
And do you
all
have
over our
the-
property.
Do you have the test results with you, or?
I have an email from her. I'd have to look it up on my phone. My attorney has that. I've sent him all my pictures, all my videos, and any correspondence that was from anybody else.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
My understanding is that the soil that it went onto the neighbor's land is what came out of digging for the new pipes that went in.
Well, that's what we've been told, and
And
that's,
that would not be more contaminated or less contaminated, in fact, might be even less contaminated because it's not on the surface.
that's fine if that's the only thing that was dumped there.
But so part of your concern is that the other things that you saw dumped there were not just soil, but were, for example, maybe rusty pipes that were taken out and were
Yep.
dumped there instead of being recycled someplace else.
Right. The whole thing was, I know Mary Morrissey, the representative, said to me that what they should have done is taken the soil, cleaned it, and then put it back in. But instead, we have contaminated soil that was dumped there.
Well-
And when you concentrate that much contaminated soil in such a small area, that's, with all the horrors of PFOA, what does that do for health or health issues?
My knowledge of, and I certainly I'm not as cognizant, aware of it as you are, is that because of the way the wind took the smoke from St. Gobain's, that it is dispersed all the way up to the Green Mountains, which means that all the soil between here and there, Woodford, is therefore contaminated. That anything we now would take off would have contamination.
Right.
So that is your understanding as well, right?
Well, they were going to dump all kinds of stuff there. I have pictures of them dumping road debris, and rusty pipes. I don't know where the rusty pipes came from. There was big rocks dumped in there. Where'd that come from?
Well, if they were digging to put in new pipes, they might have come across boulders.
Right, but rusty pipes are supposed to be sent somewhere. I got an email from a long email saying that the soil I saw, the road debris I saw that was dumped was taken to the dump. Well, that was untrue. So there was a lot of that stuff. When I sent pictures up to them, to Richard, a lot of times I didn't get anything in return, sometimes I did.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I think my attorney has spelt out the concerns that we have, especially with the zoning of the property and it being a toxic dump site. And that has ill effect on our health, on our water, and anything of what will ever, if we could ever sell our home now.
Any other questions?
If the board doesn't have any questions, I just have a few follow-up questions. You said that you had a surface water test done. Can you tell me what the date of that test was?
It was in June sometime.
Of 2018?
Yes.
Have you had any other prior surface water tests?
No.
Okay. And then you said you had 4 well tests. Do you know the dates of those tests? Give, approximately.
I have a sheet somewhere at home that has those dates on them.
Okay, you don't.
They're from, TC Mail did them.
Do you know when any of the tests were? The first test, for example?
Well, whenever the first couple months when we first had the issue, and they came around to test water.
So those tests were all from 2018?
No, they were probably done early 2017, I would believe, whenever we had this all started.
Okay. And had you had any other prior well readings before this issue started?
You mean somebody coming and checking our water?
Yes.
No, we just have a Culligan system, so that would just be for hardness and calcium and all that stuff in the water.
Do you know whether any part of your property or the Mayor property has ever been classified as a wetlands?
I tried looking it up online, and it didn't stipulate that. But like I said, if it's ankle-deep water all year round, and you can't do much with it. I mean, the trees that were there, I know Mr. Lilly, who owned the property, approximately 25, 30 years? 40. Yeah. Took down trees, probably 25 years ago back there. Okay. And there was a big mound of trees where they where they dumped a lot of stuff. There was a whole hedgerow. It was probably 100 feet long by 50 feet wide, and that was there because it was too wet to cut anything down. So.
That's on the Mayor's property?
That's on the northwest corner, pretty much where they put the road in and all the way down.
Have you had that water drainage issue you're citing looked at by an engineer?
Some of the engineers came over when we complained this past spring. They looked at it, looked at the barrel tops I had, and basically laughed at me and left.
Have you had your own engineer come and look at it?
No.
Those are my questions.
I have a question. You grow vegetables there, correct?
Correct.
How do you water them?
I use water from either the rain, or what I do is I use our well water.
But your well water is contaminated.
No, we have a filter system. The filter system keeps our water nice and clean now, so we don't have any PFOA.
The standard Culligan that they put in hundreds of in town?
Yes, we have one of those, yes.
I have one of those.
And TC Mail was coming to check it, so.
They've come to my home. Yeah.
So.
Anyone else? Anyone from the audience like to speak on this? I don't see any. Any more questions?
Any other questions?
Not for Mr. Weinberg. I think we want to have Mr.
Yeah, Charlie? I'll move that we
I think there's more people, isn't it?
can
Well, we're gonna obviously present our position.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Slow down.
Jason, you going to speak?
Yes,
Okay.
I take the lead.
You can.
Okay, thank you.
Did he sign it? Yes, he did.
Well, I did already sign in too. A lot of issues were raised. We have a couple of folks here that can speak directly and knowledgeable about some of those issues from the state. We can introduce those folks afterwards. I thought I'd just start with a quick history of why we're here and how we got here, and then we can try to address some of the concerns that were raised by Mr. Weinfurt specifically. I also have Jason Dolmich here, who is overseeing the project, who can speak to some of the specific issues regarding the project. So I did hand out earlier, and I just want to note for the record that you guys already have my decision dated 8/20/2018. I did also hand out photos of the site. I just want to point out what those are. So these dark green photos, these are the site as of yesterday. You can see it's fully vegetated. And then the other photo, that's what it looked like before, so essentially a field before and a field now. Just want to point that out for the record. Also, I've already submitted emails from the state regarding whether or not these soils needed to be stored in a solid or hazardous waste facility. And there's also a memo from Jason Dolmich addressing many of the specific claims by Mr. Weinfurt's attorney. So I just want to make sure that you guys all know that that's there, and you can look at it at your leisure during the deliberative sessions. So now just kind of a quick background of why we're here, what happened. As Mr. Weinfurt explained, surplus soils from this waterline project were placed on this particular property. And I will have Jason speak to, but he had folks supervising this project almost daily, and he can attest to the fact that there was nothing but soil placed on that site. So anything that Mr. Weinfurt saw was there only temporarily. When these soils were being placed on the site, Mr. Weinfurt hired an attorney to file a request for a decision from me regarding whether or not that project needed a permit, and his attorney essentially asked me to determine that the placement of the soil was a violation of the land use and development regulations, and that it must be removed because it was hazardous waste. I responded to that request and made the determination that no violation of the regulations had occurred based on the findings that the soils are not waste as contemplated by the regulations, because they're neither hazardous waste nor solid waste, and that was confirmed through emails from the state of Vermont. And we have folks here who can speak to that directly if the board would like that information. Also, that finding that there was no violation was based on the determination that the use of the property has not changed. It was a field before, it's a field now. So it was not land development as contemplated by our regulations. So that's kind of a quick summary of the decision. I know there were some issues raised, and I think, Jason, rather than maybe go through the assertions, your memo, which they have, we can try to address some of the specific concerns that were raised. And I might ask, I don't know if Richard or Chuck, which one of you would like to answer some of the questions that were brought up. I'd be happy to kind of direct those.
I think I was prepared to, and if it gets really deep into the nitty-gritty, maybe we can call Richard or John.
So why don't I ask you to come on up and sign in, and then we can have you sit here, and we can go through some of the concerns that were raised. Oh, you over again. Great. Just sign in, and then we'll have you sit down and introduce yourself to them.
Oh, you want me to sit down?
Yeah, I think it's probably
Okay.
the easiest thing, and then I can go through some of the questions. Unless the board would like to do it another way.
You can be seen by the camera, that would be the only thing I can think of.
You can see that.
Wherever the board would like me.
Could you just state your name, please?
Charles Schwer, I'm the director of our Waste Management and Prevention Division, and I've been quite active in this project since we first discovered it in 2016.
So So I think probably the biggest concern raised, obviously, was that the material placed there, the soil from the Silk Road project, is quote-unquote contaminated, hazardous waste or solid waste. So I figure Chuck would probably be the most qualified person, at least one of the two here, most qualified to address that. And so I guess I'd like you to speak to that issue about, is it contaminated, quote unquote? Is it a danger to public health? Is it solid waste? Is it hazardous waste? Does it need to be placed in a special facility? So if maybe you could,
Sure.
And then I'm sure the board may have some questions as well.
Sure. So in terms of our rules, we have hazardous waste regulations, which is the most dangerous toxic waste. And if waste triggers that, then it has to be disposed of under manifest, typically to an out-of-state facility to ensure proper disposal. And the PFOA contaminated soils don't come anywhere near hazardous waste designation. Actually, the only waste of PFOA that is hazardous would be a liquid waste. So it would be waste that ChemFab or Saint-Gobain would have generated when they were making the Teflon-coated material. That would have been liquid waste, and that probably would have been hazardous. And then in terms of solid waste, we look at our investigation and remediation of contaminated properties rule, and when we look at the concentrations in that rule that trigger it becoming considered more of a waste, it has to be over 300 parts per billion PFOA, and nowhere have we been finding levels of that concentration throughout the area of concern. Like you were mentioning in the studies, it is widespread everywhere. So we did look at this as surplus soils, but we also recognize, because of the widespread nature of this contaminated soil, that the last thing we wanted was it to be picked up from the Bennington area and taken to, say, Shaftesbury, where there was some potential for the residual PFOA to leach out and then contaminate somebody's wells, and then that's the problem. So our goal was to make sure every soil stayed in the region, because it was all contaminated more or less at these low concentrations, where really the only risk was leaching out of the soil and getting into drinking water. We knew we had a drinking water problem here. That's what we were doing. Our remedy, as you all know, was connecting people to municipal water, or in Mr. Weinfurt's case, putting on a point of entry treatment carbon filtration system. And so in doing this, we worked with the MSK to develop a plan to how to manage it, so soils wouldn't go to areas where wells were clean, wouldn't go to wetlands. There were no wetlands determination there. And our goal all along was, and we asked the contractors to do really a 3-step test. If the soils could go back in the hole where the water lines were going, that was our first priority. If they couldn't go back in the hole, then could they go in the right-of-way right next to where the water lines were? And then ultimately, if they couldn't go in the hole or in the right-of-way, we would we encourage them to go to locations that the contractor found that met our siting criteria, that would have no impacts on drinking water wells, and would minimize truck traffic, keep them as close to the area they were removed and placed on these sites that were approved. And in this case, it was a site that was approved in the property near Mr. Weinfurt's. And our people did inspect the site throughout the project, and I know Jason's people did inspect the project. We did receive a complaint of other material being sent there, and that was a concern to us. We sent out an environmental enforcement officer, Patrick Lokes, to inspect the facility, and he concluded that there was no allegations that raised a concern at the state level. So we did take Mr. Weinfurt's concerns to heart, and we investigated him, and we didn't find an issue.
Could I just follow up, Chuck? So I think it's important for folks to understand that this soil does not pose a risk to public health. You could walk on it, touch it, plant crops in it. The state has not indicated or recommended that people not touch the soil.
Yeah, correct. The number that triggered our concern as developed by the Department of Health was 300, and I think the average of all the testing was like 45.
So well below the level.
Lower, the highest was 45. These are my technical people. The highest was 45 and the lowest was much, much less. And again, it wouldn't trigger our rules to have it become a managed waste. But again, we were concerned that we didn't want it to go to Shaftesbury. We didn't want it to go to an area that wasn't affected by the ChemFab releases out the smokestack. So that was our real goal. And all these sites were pre-approved, and again, we visited a number of times, and at least from what we were concerned with, we thought it was well managed. Now, he made other concerns like drainage that we didn't have anything to do with, so I'm not going to comment on that. I don't know, yes or no, whether that was an issue.
And we will deal with the drainage issue next, but I want to give everybody an opportunity to ask Chuck questions if you had them, so I'll let Bill.
Yeah, the complaint was talking about groundwater, the contaminated groundwater. The numbers are quite high in that.
The groundwater issue throughout the region varies depending on where you were, but yeah, the drinking water standard is 20 parts per trillion, so you don't want to drink it. That's the primary route of exposure that we're concerned with. And clearly the groundwater was already contaminated in that area. I don't know the exact levels, but I think what Mr. Weinford mentioned is probably accurate. So
Why would you saying the numbers increased? Why would the numbers increase?
I don't know that they did, however, so I don't have that information to say yes or no. I agree that they increased, but we do know throughout the testing of all the wells in the area, they fluctuated. They go up and down just depending on the conditions. There might be more rain to flush out, less rain. So it's not atypical to see the concentrations jump up and down, and we've seen that consistently throughout the entire region for when we're monitoring.
Okay. Anyone else? Dan?
Got a handful of questions. Were any trees or other large vegetation removed, Dan or Jason, from the Myers property?
Jason, did you sign in already? Yes.
Yes, I did. Yes, there was some tree removal. There was what Mr. Weinford was describing, I believe. If you look in the before and after photo, there was a stand of trees in the middle, and that's gone. And it's just right in the center of the field.
And how many times were either the department, or whatever, your departments or your people at the site over the course of the year or year and a half that it was being?
We had an inspector on site on the project daily.
Every day?
During the course of the construction, that's correct.
And MSK engineering person?
Yes,
They're
that's
almost
correct.
every day? Okay. And so did they see any residue in any barrels or any barrels that were, I mean, there's obviously some photos of the barrels tipped over.
There are photos of barrels. Those barrels existed on site prior to the construction. That had nothing to do with our activities, or with the activities of the construction.
Oh, so they weren't?
Those were there.
Barrels or anything like that?
We don't know what they are.
Jason, you speak a little louder.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we don't know what they are.
They were there before?
That's correct.
Is the 8,000 cubic yard estimate accurate in your opinion?
I cannot tell you exactly how much material was placed there, given, I believe, the 8,000 cubic yard was the estimate of what the maximum amount of yardage could be placed there. I do not believe that that is what was attained, because we placed as much material as we could. That was a worst-case scenario that we were looking at.
Okay. And just in general, not specific to this site, what would be long-term concerns with buried asphalt?
That asphalt was not buried.
Okay, but if it were, that's why I want to make this as generic as possible.
Yeah, I don't know. I would actually defer back to the state. The asphalt, just to give you some background, asphalt, I know that there are some photos of asphalt piles or small asphalt piles, that the majority or all of the asphalt material that was removed as a part of the reconstruction of Silk Road was taken to an asphalt plant and resold to them.
So if there were a site somewhere else that had buried asphalt, what would you guess would be the concerns with that soil?
The impact?
Yeah.
I honestly, Dan, I don't know if I can answer that question. I don't know what the potential impact of that would be.
And finally, my last question, were the Myers compensated for the use of their land during this process?
Yes, I believe they had an agreement between the contractor and the Myers. It had nothing to do with our offices.
That's all.
Jason, could you, maybe since it's fairly timely, and I know you have some other comments too, but I'm going to go ahead and sit down, but address the drainage issue, because I think that's pretty important, and I know you did some investigations, and they do have that memo.
Yeah.
But I think it makes sense for you.
We did receive the complaint from Mr. Weinfurt. Two of my engineers from my office asked for, took his complaint. And we also looked at the facility, the area, not the facility, but the area itself in relationship to Mr. Weinfurt's house. And that evidence, that area is shown on the attached map. But our review of the site was that there was no observable runoff from the surplus soils area, that the low point of the Mayer property is lower than the Weinfurt property, and that is located on the northeast corner of the Mayer property at where the farm road is. That we reviewed the LiDAR in this vicinity, and the low point existed prior to any construction activities.
And what is LiDAR?
LiDAR data, I'm sorry, light. It's actually a laser. It's an aerial laser survey, and what
For elevation?
just for elevation, right? It's similar to it has replaced DEM surfaces. So
Don't know what that is.
and I wish I could tell you exactly what both of those acronyms are, but it's a slightly more accurate form. They were flown in 2012 for FEMA, and we often use them for planning tools, and especially when you're looking at sort of large-scale hydrologic relationships from one area to the other. They're relatively useful. So, and that there is also the complaint that Mr. Weinfurt made was in the spring. There's, in my view, there's a significant grade break between the hillside and the flat area along Silk Road, and that is often a location for water breakout, particularly in the springtime. And that we also noted on site that there was attempts in the past to address wetness along this area as there was the installation of a catch basin on the southwest corner of the parcel. So in our opinion, from that information, we offered the opinion that the change in hydrologic condition was not with basis.
Jane?
Yeah, is this drawn someplace else that's in a large scale that I could read?
Yes.
Could I have a copy, please?
Yes, you may. I cannot give it to you right now, but
That's all right.
I can offer the
would like
board.
to
I can
read
give that to the
something
board.
that I could read.
Yes.
I think they'll give us magnifying glasses.
Well, yeah. I want to read the topography, I can't.
Yes, I can submit that to the board.
Anything else for Jason?
Do you have any other responses that you want?
I just want to point out, I brought up, we talked about the drums, the asphalt, and I also followed up on the culvert pipes, the removed culvert pipes. Those were also temporarily stored on site. So there you do have photographs of them, but my understanding is that they were removed.
You have photographs and what?
I know that Mr. Weinfurt took photographs
Yes.
of piles of material, scrap of material that was sort of down by the entrance to the road. And that, from my site chief inspector, that material was not buried on site, it was taken off site.
Are there any records of it being delivered someplace?
That is a good question. I would have to ask the contractor.
Okay? Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Anyone else to speak?
Thank you.
My name is Mary Weinpert.
You have to sign in.
I did. Like Bruce said, it was my grandparents' land, home where we live. I grew up there. I played in that backyard. It has never been ankle-deep mud like it is now. Something's different, and the only thing different is this project. I can't say what they did, but I've seen a lot of the pictures. We never saw things being taken away. We saw a lot of things coming in. I can't say that they took it away. They didn't go through the covered bridge, but we never saw loads of stuff going away in the other direction. I'd also be interested to know if there were records of where it went. That would answer a lot of questions. But this land is, like I said, I played on that backyard growing up, and we played there as kids. We weren't in a mud puddle.
Anyone else? What's pleasure? We want to close the deliberations.
Yeah.
Okay.
You make the motion.
I'm making a motion to go into closed deliberative session.
I'll second it. 30 seconds. All in favor? After the next meeting, next person, we're going to go to closed deliberative sessions, and then Dan will have an answer for you tomorrow. Oh, okay. She won't have it tomorrow.
I won't have it tomorrow. Little calendar man
We only have one item of other business this evening. Actually, it involves Jason as well. It's the Bennington County Industrial Corporation, the current owner of the Putnam block. They are simply seeking an extension of their zoning permit, site development plan approval, and design plan approval, and subdivision plan approval for redevelopment of the Hotel Putnam, Winslow, and Courthouse buildings. My understanding is, Jason can confirm, that they've already begun environmental remediation efforts in that project, specifically asbestos. I think they're done. And they expect that as soon as early next week, demolition will begin of the old Greenberg's building in anticipation of the redevelopment. So, Jason, if anything else to add, let me know.
My name's Jason Dolmich. I'm with MSK Engineering, but I'm also a member of the Bennington County Industrial Corporation, so I suppose I'm acting as engineer and owner. I don't think so, Dan. I think you've said it very well. So we have asked for an extension, and we should be beginning construction on this project very soon. So.
How long of an extension do you want?
We've requested 12 months.
That's a typical request.
Is that for one particular phase or for the whole project?
Well, the only phase that they have approval for is phase one, which is the renovation of the existing historic structures.
And removal of the Greenbergs.
Yes, and the demolition of the Greenberg's building.
Correct.
Retail building.
Yes, Barry? I'll move to...
I just have one question.
Okay.
The original permit was for 1 year, and it was issued on September 22nd, 2017, and the request was September 26th, 2018. Are there any issues with that?
No, because it doesn't go into effect until the 30-day appeal period is run.
Okay.
So it's a very good point, and one that I was very clear to them to make sure they get it before that date. So it's a good point. But yes, the permit isn't effective until the 30-day appeal period runs.
Barry?
My motion is to approve the extension.
Okay.
Second.
Bill seconds. Any discussion? All in favor?
Great.
Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you very much.
Okay, folks, I'm gonna leave you in there for your keeping hands. I get to go home early for once.
Can I ask Jason one
I guess we're
quick
going to thank you then.
Hey, Dan, can I ask Jason one quick question?
I'll let Meryl decide that. She's your,
Well, no, we should, the record's closed right now.
Well, it's not necessarily to do with this project.
Oh, okay.
In general, it's just a general.
General.
What I was gonna ask you about the blacktop, that is really considered a hazardous waste, is it? Is there any definition of hazardous waste when it comes to something like that?
I don't want to answer that because I don't know the definitions of those right off the bat. I think you're probably right, but I'm not certain.
I mean, we've been doing it for years.
Not to mention difficult.
All I know is that our material was recycled somewhere.
Are we closed?
Not yet.
Did we close the hearing?
Not yet. Barry,
I'll move to close here. The meeting.
Charles seconds. All in favor?
I guess.
Meeting's closed. Thank you.